Just that's basically your cytochrome C oxidase. Basically, what it's going to do is it's going to displace nitric oxide out of that and replace it with oxygen. So when the body's under any stress response, what it does is it shuts down its ability to produce ATP as a rate limiter because it can't detox. So straight away, here are some of its magic principles. It converts triglycerides back to glucose. It allows glucose to enter the cell, and it upregulates ATP. So in the benefit of upregulating ATP, one of the really cool parts is the fact that the mitochondria is not only a powerhouse, it's also the director of detox. So when it creates this detox mechanism, it uses two processes to do it. One, the pure production of actually creating ATP creates reactive oxygen species. So by the process of hormesis, which is when the body basically wants to say, okay, I've created a challenge on the system and a stress on the system, the body then responds in kind of like any exercise response. You know, pick up a heavy weight, your body's going to start to create new muscle fibers to cope with that extra response. That's a kind of hormesis. In this case, the hormesis is the mitochondria says to the cell, guys, I'm about to make a mess. I'm going to make reactive oxygen species. I'm going to make some toxic chemicals. I need you to stimulate the detox mechanism. And NRF2 is one of the transcription factors that sends a message to the nucleus, and as a result, creates the production of a whole bunch of detox chemicals. So it also opens up the lymphatic channels to drain these. And so what it does is it converts your fat-soluble chemicals that have basically grabbed your reactive oxygen species, and what it does is it makes them into water-soluble. So you've got glutathione, sulfur transferase, UDP glycation transferase, you've got methyl transferase. So you've got all the different mechanisms of cellular detox are stimulated by NRF2, and light can directly upregulate NRF2 through mitochondrial activity. So not only are we creating really awesome ATP to drive the cell, we enhancing basically the detox mechanism. So that's all good and well, supposing you've got glucose. So one of the other really great effects that I've found is that 635 nanometer can displace TNF alpha, which is a very nasty little cytokine involved in insulin resistance, and it displaces that to allow insulin to function, and it can also stimulate this little receptor here on the cell wall called the GLUT1 receptor. It's stimulated directly, which allows glucose into the cell. So effectively reverses the insulin resistance that we've seen so much in metabolic syndrome. So to add to that, it's going to also have quite a magical effect on fat cells. So taking healthy fat tissue out of women during bariatric surgery, they exposed them to photobiomodulation, and they found that also at a fluence of around about 5 joules, they got them to basically expel all of their fat out of the cells, which then made them bioavailable to be transported by the lymphatics back to the liver. And what the liver did is that through the process of lipolysis, basically converted these things back to producing glucose. So we went triglycerides through acetyl-CoA back to glucose, and as a result, prevented the manufacture of ketones and allowed the body to now turn the glucose back into fuel. And as a byproduct of that fuel, you produce oxygen and carbon dioxide, water and carbon dioxide, as opposed to ketones and uric acid when the body's in a stress mode and it's burning protein. So the other very important aspect that I found is its ability to control macrophages. So I published a bestseller in 2018 on metabolism and belly fat. And one of the big key points of this is that when the belly fat starts to get damaged, there's a massive infiltration of macrophages into the area. And how the macrophages work is that they use a communication mechanism where certain cytokines are actively going to be able to upregulate their function to make more cytokines. And their internal transcription factor is NF-kappa B. And what the NF-kappa B does is it tells the genes now to send a message to the Golgi apparatus over here, and that's going to now create a lot more cytokines to upregulate the effect, which is wonderful when you've got an infection or a damage. You're going to get these macrophages effectively. These are M1 macrophages. They spray out napalm, destroying the area, gobbling up the debris. But we don't want that in normal tissue. And the problem that we have with belly fat is it creates this tremendous amount of inflammation. So how NF-kappa B is regulated in the body to stop cytokine production is through a little chemical called an annexin, which is another transcription factor, and that is released by cortisol. So what we've got is the anti-inflammatory effects of cortisol use this internal transcription factor to knock out NF-kappa B. So here's another wonderful effect is narrow light therapy, 635, has a very profound effect in down-regulating NF-kappa B directly in immune cells, mimicking the benefits of cortisol. So the cool part about that is that from a metabolic point of view and a waste point of view, what you're doing is that the body's not making massive amounts of cytokines, so it brings down the cortisol effects in the system, simultaneously making sure that the anti-inflammatory effects are starting to work. So this is why we see a lot of tissue regeneration happening. And here's one of my favorite parts of what it can do. So bring in the endoplasmic reticulum. Easy way to look at this is it's the 3D printer of the cell. And what it does is the endoplasmic reticulum takes the signal from the genes, pushes it into the ER, and these are the ribosomes, little dots on this rough ER here. And what it does is it makes proteins. So it runs them off in these chains, but then the amino acids in certain sequences have to be able to bind to each other, and it's basically involves protein folding, because the mechanism of any protein and its action is based on its structural shape rather than just its line of amino acids. So the cool thing about this now is that one of the hugest causes of cellular destruction is when the ER gets stressed and it can't fold proteins. It's kind of like backing up the laundry where you can't get enough folded. And so we have this unfolded protein response in the body to protect against that, because if it doesn't happen, what the body will do without a UPR is that it'll basically commit suicide. It stimulates an apoptic response and the cell destroys itself because it doesn't want to make incorrect proteins. So what happens with the UPR response, there's three aspects to it. One is the release of chemicals to inhibit the production of more mRNA. So it says, okay, please stop sending messages to the printer. The second is a chemical that enhances protein folding. And the third is a chemical that takes out the unfolded proteins and removes it through a vesicle out of the cell. So the really interesting thing about this is that most of your macular problems and eye problems, uveitis, macular degeneration, retinitis pigmentosa, even myopia, have all been linked to an unfolded protein problem in the cells. A lot of your degenerative diseases now, they're starting to find the plaque formation is the inability for the cells to fold their proteins. So again, here's one of its truly, probably even maybe just a close second to its ability to upregulate ATP is the fact that it can help upregulate the unfolded protein response and thus prevent the cells from dying, and two, help the cells to accurately replicate. And this is why we see a lot of studies showing that your light therapy on the skin can improve collagen and elastin production. We start to get an increase in neovascularization. You start to get an increase in neurons growing. There's an incredible mouse study that I was reading on the brain, and they were just showing that 5 seconds of a light onto the brain and using CoQ10 was having just incredible anti-stress effects in a stress test with mice where they actually kept them restricted, and how it could reduce all of the inflammatory mechanisms, high levels of norepinephrine. So I'm pretty excited about its ability to help regulate tissues. And this is where the regeneration part comes in. It's also capable of improving circulation. the nitric oxide released out of the cell goes to the local circulation and upregulates that. And then one of the other things that I really, really enjoy about it is that there's been multiple studies to show that it lowers CRP, interleukin 6, triglycerides, and LDL, and increases adiponectin. So all of those are involved in vascular damage. Adiponectin is like the tile adhesive that sticks your endothelial cells to the cell wall. Your CRP and interleukin 6, together with LDLs, are implicated in a lot of your plaque formation. And it's a little bit like, the adiponectin's not there. The tiles start to lift off your endothelium. And as a result, the body chucks the bath mat of cholesterol over this stuff so that you don't cut your blood vessels, your blood cells on the vessel wall. And it's kind of like saying, well, until we can get adiponectin back. So where does the adiponectin go? Well, the adiponectin is as a result of, so this is what I wrote. This is my work that I did, is on the cyclic spiral. And what it does is that it stands for cortisol pushing up insulin, which causes all sugar now to store as fat. The fat gets infiltrated with macrophages, and the macrophages now create a massive demand for cortisol, and cortisol now drives its starvation effect and starts affecting everything. Cortisol is also made from progesterone. So what it does is that steals your progesterone away from testosterone and estrogen. We also get cortisol influencing and insulin influencing 5-alpha reductase. So we see DHT, which is implicated in prostate disease and polycystic ovarian syndrome. We've got your TNF-alpha involved here with the insulin resistance. Here's the part that's so important for exercise, is that when the body is stressed and it's got this false starvation state and high cortisol, it tells the body that it's more favorable to burn proteins and to store glucose as triglycerides and make belly fat. So when someone exercises and they battle to get fit, it's mainly because of the fact that they're now cannibalizing their proteins. So they do two proteins. They break down the actin and myosin in the muscles, and they break down your collagen. So that's why we see a lot of tendon issues. We see a lot of people basically getting herniations with belly fat. And here we see on the left-hand side, the cardiovascular disease. There we've got our interleukin 6, CRP, LDLs, and adiponectin down, all as a result of this. So honestly, the cool part of this machine for me is the fact that it's anti-inflammatory. So it takes out the inflammation. It basically stops the cortisol as a result of its ability to create a stress. It stops the cortisol. It lowers insulin resistance. It enhances glucose use by the cells, and it increases lipolysis, making it probably one of the most comprehensive ways to help people to lose weight. Obviously, they can't just continue eating what they want. So we put them on a diet of low wheat, sugar, no wheat and sugar, no coffee, alcohol, and oils. And we've seen some really, really incredible weight loss results with people. In their first therapy, they'll lose about 1 inch off their belly. And they go, wow, that's quite stunning. How do I do that? And you say, well, first of all, you've broken down the fat cells. And then second of all, you've taken every single cell the light touches and enhanced the ATP production. So, and now those cells are firing properly, they can detox, and then we take the fat-soluble toxins out of the fat cells, and we stop the need for making more fat cells to store them, because now they can be water-soluble, and they can now be pushed through the lymphatics via the liver to the gut, or via the liver to the kidneys, and eliminated safely. So in a nutshell, that's why I'm so excited about, yeah. In a technical nutshell, I see Dr. Maroon laughing there saying, yeah, in a nutshell. So my quick little high-end physiological boom. So needless to say, it's incredibly exciting. I mean, then on the ground, what we're looking at is there's great research showing people getting an improved exercise response. My personal instantaneous experience of that is that we put people on a whole body vibration machine. So let me share my screen quickly to show you what this whole body vibration machine does. Just from a mind-blowing mathematical calculation, it's so cool. So when you put someone on a whole body vibration machine, the power output is an equation of mass times acceleration times by displacement. So you take a 70 kilogram person, so 220 odd, accelerate them at 25 hertz per frequency and a displacement of an inch over 1 minute. It's equivalent power output to squatting your car once. So it's equivalent to picking up 1.5 tons. So we put them through this for basically, we put them on the bed for 5 minutes, about 6 inches away, and we put them on the machine for 2 sessions of 5 minutes, 5 before and 5 after. And I tell you what, the incredible part about this is that when they do this exercise, we get them to engage all their muscles as much as they can, and they'll fatigue in around about, if they on their first run, they'll fatigue about the first minute and a half. And then what we do is we put them on the light, 5 minutes on the front, 5 minutes on the back. At 6 inches distance from the body, that gives you a fluence of around about 6 joules per square centimeter over that 5 minutes. So it's in the ideal range. And then they get back on the machine. And the cool part about this is everybody will go for at least double to triple of what they could do 10 minutes before. And they can't believe it. A lot of people say to me, I don't think I'm doing this properly. I don't know if I'm like engaging, because they're holding this machine, they're shaking there, and they can't believe that their system is already like that. And then when they get off this, they've lost, we haven't had a single person yet lose under 3/4 of an inch on their waist in this 20 minutes. And it's because literally the body's created the lipolysis of those cells. It's turned it back into glucose, and then this high intensity exercise, what's very cool about this with the belly fat patients is the fact that because their protein, they're so used to cannibalizing their protein, this exercise happens too fast. There's no time for the body to cannibalize the protein. It has to use glucose. So it goes for the glucose in the muscles, the glycogen in the muscles, then pulls the glucose out of the arteries. Then the liver says, well, the glucose levels are getting too low. It then starts unpacking it out the liver, and then it goes for the triglycerides, and then we go after the belly fat. So to me, it's the most integrous way to lose weight. You're not tricking the body. You're just making it work like it was always meant to work. So again, another quick nutshell of why I'm pretty excited. And the cool thing about this, we all know how great research is in theory, but does it translate to my patient? Does it translate to the person actually seeing benefits? And to me, that's pretty cool. That's where I see the benefit, where people don't care about the science as long as it's working for them. And, you know, I like to know why, so I can manipulate things. And so the regen is great. The incredible, worth the price of admission, is the major change in their anxiety. Everybody reports after the second week that they're sleeping better, their anxiety is way down, and there's fantastic research on its ability to lower norepinephrine, both the red light therapy as well as the whole body vibration has a incredible ability. I mean, I was reading a wonderful research that they're using the whole body vibration therapy to treat Parkinson's disease, because of the massive dopamine response that it puts out.
Incredible.
So some cool things.
Comments?
And a really nice way to do it. Okay, so I'm out. Done.
I have a few questions, but I'll let Joe go first, because my questions are
I'm blown away by what a phenomenal amount of physiology, biochemistry, and what you've said. So it's anti-inflammatory, it decreases cortisol, it enhances insulin sensitivity, increases glucose use, lipolysis. One thing that particularly intrigued me was the NRF2.
Yeah.
And what NRF2, let me digress. I'll take a tangent. For the last 2 or 3 years, I've been working with the head of the Indian National Brain Institute in Gurgaon, India.
Right.
He's an expert in MR spectroscopy. And I'll send you the papers we published. We published 5 papers, 6 papers in the last 2 years, in which we've measured in Alzheimer's disease and in MCI and also in Parkinson's disease, glutathione in the substantia nigra, also in the hippocampus. And in all 3 of those disorders, we've shown a marked decrease in glutathione non-invasively. So what is the main antioxidant in the brain? Is glutathione. What is the what is the stimulus, the factor, the factor that stimulates glutathione? NRF2.
Yeah. And I was blown away by that too. And I found that it was like, whoa, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are actually, I'm trying to raise funds now to do a study where we take patients with PD, AD, and MCI, quantitate their document, their GSH is low, do neurocognitive studies, put them on a glutathione preparation, gamma-glutamyl-cysteine, which is a precursor to glutathione, as you would know biochemically, and treat them and measure them post-op. So basically what we're trying to discover is a way to increase glutathione in the brain, which from oxidative stress, as you know, there are papers that showing that beta amyloid is a downstream effect of free radicals and oxidative stress.
Absolutely.
So
unfolded protein response.
Pardon me?
The unfolded protein response.
And the protein, I mean, you're saying that your red light is removing unfolded or misfolded proteins from the cell. I mean, again, it's amazing how all these things kind of fit.
Absolutely.
My question.
And then you apply it to weight loss, which is not a small problem. And Ozempic at $12,000 a year. So you need I've used the vibrating devices myself. We have them in the locker room with the Steelers. Our athletes use those things routinely. And to add to that, red light therapy, 5 minutes off, 5 minutes off. Is that each day? Daily?
No, I wouldn't do it daily. It's too much. We would do alternating days.
Alternating
you could do the
days.
vibration therapy daily, but you could do, I would do alternating. All the response I've seen, because you need to give the body a little bit of a metabolic recovery so that it can actually process stuff. Otherwise, you start to congest the lymphatics and then the detox mechanisms. And so all you end up doing is retaining fluid. So you need to get the body to be able to metabolize the fats, turn it back into energy, use the energy, and then the byproducts from the glutathione and everything binding, so it's fantastic.
How long are they on the vibrator machine?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. 10 minutes there, and then 5 minutes over and over and over and under on the red light device.
Yeah, so I do 5 minutes on the vibro machine, 5 minutes over, 5 minutes under, and then 5 minutes back on the vibro machine. So my theory there was to create a demand in the first 5 minutes. And then what we do is we put them on the red light to mobilize all the energy. And then I stick them back on the vibration machine, in a sense, to mop up all the energy that we've just created by the release of all that glucose. So we cause the muscles to now create this massive demand for the glucose, which the vibration does. And then they lose that weight.
Your red light device is a bed. Is that what I saw?
What you see, I'll show you the picture. It's basically a slab. It's a 3 foot by 1 foot slab.
It's the device behind me, Doc. So I can turn it on for a second.
That's what you use?
This is what it looks like when you turn it on. It's very, very powerful. It doesn't get hot. The machine itself stays cool, stays at room temperature. No heat, but it just generates quite a bit of
So it's total body. You're not applying this just to the head.
I'm 6 foot
No.
tall, and I'll stand next to it for you to see how we kind of catch me all the way from my chest down to my knees, pretty much. So it's definitely a big enough piece of kit to kind of address your whole system. When we do have beds as well.
It's really mitochondrial stimulation that is the key to the whole thing, and the cytochrome C and all of the downstream effects from that.
Absolutely, yeah, that's it. So it makes sense if the cell can actually produce energy. I mean, our pure existence of life is all about just trying to make ATP, absorption from food, to be able to get that to break down to ATP so cells can then make fuel so they can then detox themselves. I mean, it revolves around that. If we can get ATP production optimized, every single cell function starts to improve.
Now, Colin, aren't there devices now using these same wavelengths that simply are, go on the head?
There are some good, there's some ones. I've looked at a lot of the different studies done on those. There's some really awesome ones. There's a lot of controversy about whether the red light can penetrate the head, but there's too much evidence to show that there's definitely photonic energy in the nerves. So it's not really about just the wavelength that can get through the skull, because, the pineal gland is a bit of a conundrum to us. The fact that it's light sensitive and sits 5 centimeters behind the skull, is an indication that photons can pass through there without the wavelength. But yeah, we've seen these devices. Again, there's been mixed results, and it all comes down to strength. This machine here has got 200 milliwatts of irradiance. And how many lights are there, David?
We have about 585 LEDs on this panel, and each LED is 5 watts each. So that's extremely powerful. There's not another machine in the market that has that level of power output as this machine.
And that's I've used these things for years, really. Since 2004, I've done different light therapies and lasers and stuff like that. What really impressed me about this one was just that extreme power. And like I say, with the meat analogy, if you've got a great grill and you want to grill your steak, you need a lot of temp for a short amount of time. You obviously leave it on too long, it's going to burn. But, you can't say, well, I'll use a little bit of energy over a longer period of time. The body doesn't work like that. It needs this excitation to happen at an intensity in a short burst. And that's when it functions the best.
Yeah, there are all sorts of tables now and health spas that have red light beds. They're every place. You lie down on this bed, and I don't know how many LEDs they have or what the power wattage is, but it's something that is very powerful. Let me put it this way, marketed very heavily. I don't know if they're effective or not,